Right, everybody, good afternoon and welcome to me, Mark, the BowlerHat Farmer. And today I've got the absolute pleasure on my very first interview as we start 2026 with a whole new agenda for us and where we're going with the new website, the foodfindershub.co.uk. We are absolutely roaring ahead. Now, to protect food and to protect our way of living, one of the things that I wanted to do was to bring on someone who I've followed across Richard Vobes' show several times now while he's had the time to talk on there, and someone who talks a great talk, but I don't really understand it. So I've got today with me Sovereign Pete to talk with me about what it is that I actually don't understand about the protection of farms, farmland, and this BS, what's going on about the destruction of farms and inheritance tax. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be your very first guest on your podcast.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. One of the things I wanted to really get to understand with all of this, Pete, is from my side, I guess I've been following this now for some time, hearing you talking about what's legal and what's lawful. And that's something where, I've got a big mouth. I'm good at standing my own ground, but I really like to stand my own ground when I actually know what I'm talking about. And this is one of the things I've understood certain snippets, but haven't really got my head around the importance of it and actually understanding as a sovereign person, as me as a human being, what rights I actually have. So I thought, well, if I can welcome you to the show to perhaps initially cover that section before we talk about the bigger section of protecting the farmers and the farming.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem at all. I mean, you're in a situation like so many other people out there. They're feeling the pressure of what's coming from government, but they don't know what's going on and they don't know how to handle it. Well, they've got snippets of information. So you mentioned legal and that sort of stuff. So let's do some basic stuff just to get everybody up to speed. And I'll just let everybody know what we do at the Sovereign Project. So at the Sovereign Project, we have a full understanding of the system of commerce that operates within the world today, where most people don't understand this. And we're willing to share this with anybody who asks for our help. So if people want to come forward, we'll help you learn this stuff. So you've got to understand what's going on. The average system or the average person is in a system of commerce. So you go, what does that mean? Well, it uses legal titles to entrap you into a contract that you don't realize that you've actually entered into. And then once you've entered into the contract, the government or people who work for government actually can act upon you, including tax. So I can touch on a few little basic things just to get us started. So most people do not know the difference between lawful and legal. They talk about it all the time. They say, oh, you can't do that. That's illegal. So legal, in the most basic term, means contract. So whenever you hear that term, legal or illegal, the person saying that is referring to a contract or a jurisdiction. So the next question you should ask is, can I see the contract? How am I obligated to the policy that makes something illegal or legal? So legal means contract. Lawful, anything to do with law, requires a victim. So if there's no victim, then no law has been broken. That's so easy now. So everyone can now figure that out.
Yep.
So let's touch on tax very quickly. A lot of people out there think that they are forced to pay tax. They have to pay it. This is not true. Tax is contractual, which means you have to enter into a contract and actually agree to pay the tax, and then therefore you're obligated to pay it. Now, this is done through sleight of hand. This is done through manipulation. This is done through the acceptance of legal titles. So people have got to understand the concept of a legal title versus your name. So, for example, your name is what was given to you at birth by your mother and father.
Yeah.
And your last name is your family name. That comes from your dad's name. That's a family name, right? That is not the surname. The surname, this is where people slip up. The surname stands for surety name. And you go, okay, then what does surety mean? Surety means that you've accepted the debts of someone else. So you're basically, if the other person doesn't pay it, you are willing to pay their debts for them. You're surety for the debt. That's what surname means. So every time you fill out a form with a government, and again, if you fill out a form, you're operating in their jurisdiction because it's their form.
Yeah.
And you've become the informant because you're filling out the form. A lot of this stuff is like, oh God, why didn't I see that?
Yeah. See it now. Yeah.
So you're the informant because you're filling out the form, and it will say, what's your surname? And you'll fill it out. But that is their name that they control. And now you've agreed to be the debtor. And because you filled out the form, you've agreed to pay tax. And that's how they trap you. So if you want to get a little bit more into that, feel free to ask me any questions where you might be scratching your head.
Well, I guess there's one thing on there you said about, so you made the point about if it's a limited company you're dealing with, okay, and they come up with a policy, and you made the point about policies. So if the government comes up with something that I don't agree with, let's say, a classic example today, they've done a lockdown of all birds.
Right.
Okay. So, if we look at that as a policy they've imposed, that is a policy that them as a limited company have established. Am I right on that?
You're absolutely correct.
Right. So that's nothing to do with law.
Nope.
But they trick people into this belief in the wording of things like, oh, legislation's been changed to make this legal, and think clever wording. And it just fascinates me. I know we had a quick brief chat the other night, and I was like, I came off the phone, and I was like, huh. And I think, as I said at the time, one of the things which I've come to understand in all of this, Pete, is the fact that I really know so little. And I feel within that, I also speak for probably 99% of farmers, which I know you are keen to help, and so am I, and which is the reason we've kind of doing this interview. Yeah. And for me, I guess the next step on from that section you've just covered is how do we then protect, if that's the people protected, the farmer himself when he goes and gets a parking ticket, the farmer if he takes his untaxed tractor on the road if there's such a thing, and whatever it might be. Now let's talk about the real harsh nitty-gritty stuff, because obviously at the moment one of the things which is scaring, and I mean that really scaring people to commit suicide, for Christ's sake, which is terrifying, this inheritance tax which the Labour Party's brought in, and I don't care if it was Labour, red, blue, green, yellow, it would have made no difference, right? Let's just clarify that. Yeah. But for me, this is about them understanding what they can do to protect themselves, because I think it was yourself who said in the past about Dukes, for instance, that they sit outside of all of this in a protected bubble. So tell us a bit more about that, because I'm keen to learn this side.
Yeah, no worries. That's fantastic. Yeah, so you've got to learn about jurisdictions and how the game is played. So like I said before, everyone is tricked in operating into a system of commerce, which is basically a corporate jurisdiction. And that is only done through consent. So you're tricked through a contract or by filling out the forms. Like I said before, tax is contractual, which means you have to agree. So now you understand this, you've got to say, what's going on? Well, these farmers, unfortunately, don't have their own estate in this game, okay? Right. In fact, they don't own anything, right? And this is the same for everybody out there, which you've got to get the grips of this. Everyone out there, you think you own your house. No, you don't. You think you own your house. No, you don't. Now, don't panic, everybody. You've been tricked, and you can get these things back relatively easy once you understand what's going on. So people have got to learn the difference between a deed and a title. Now, a deed, I'll make it simple. The deed that you acquire is what is called an allodial title deed. Now, a deed can only be created by a living, breathing man or woman, and it is backed up by that affidavit. So an affidavit is a document where they swear to God the truth and they sign upon it. And it's the highest document there is within this entire system. And there's no higher document than your affidavit. So the deed is created on the say-so of a living, breathing man or woman. Now, let's just touch on what legal standing means, okay? Because people don't understand what this means. Legal, as we've mentioned before, means contract. Right? So you're entering into a contract. Standing literally means a man or woman standing by the contract. So visualize this as a contract, and I stand by it, and I would do so by putting my name, and then I would sign it, and that is legal standing. Yeah.
Right.
So if you receive documentation in the post, and it could be a tax bill, it could be whatever, and there's no signature on it, that document has no legal standing. It's toilet paper. It's junk. You can send it back and say, I can't even read this. There's no signature on it. Without a signature, I can't ascertain obligation because I don't know who I am dealing with. No legal standing. So we go back to the deed. So a deed will be signed. There will be a name upon it, and it will be signature, an autograph of the person who created the deed. And upon that, a allodial title deed will be whatever it is, house, land. And everything to do with the land, all the titles are within that deed. So that's licensing, rights, privileges, everything. Okay. Right. Now, let's just touch on ownership. People don't understand ownership. And we'll get back to deeds. Ownership, anything with the word ship on the end, any word with a ship on the end, okay, ownership, is telling you a clue that is maritime law. It's a system of maritime law. Yeah. And there could be more than one party involved. So normally there's two parties involved. So for example, friendship, that's got to be two. Relationship, got to be two. Ownership, oh, there could be two people involved. So ownership, the average person, if you ask them, do you own the house? And they go, yes. And they go, okay. And I say, you want to build an extension on the back of your house. You're going to get planning permission. And they go, yes, I'm going to get planning permission. And I go, well, you don't own it then, because you're asking permission to build on your land. So that's the mindset stuff. You've got to get past that. But the fact that you're asking permission to build on the land says there's a second party involved, someone with a higher authority in this ownership.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So within this ownership, think of it as a ship, and all the rights are in this ship. On an allodial title deed, you own everything. There's no third party. There's no one else involved.
Okay.
There's no higher authority. You have full and complete sovereign control of the land, 100%. You can do whatever you want with it. You can farm it, build on it, put a theme park on it. Whatever you want to do, you can do because you own everything. So people need to have a allodial title deed. But what do they have? They have a title. And that title is with land registry, right? Now, yeah, I know. You know. It's all in front of your face. So the word,
isn't it just?
It is when you see it. You go, oh my God, why didn't I see it? So, land registry. Now, you see, these people who run the government, they're telling you, they'll tell you everything, but the average person can't read, so they don't know what's being said.
Yeah.
So land registry. So what does register mean? It means handing over ownership, doesn't it? So you're handing over ownership, and you go, well, what are you actually handing over with land registry? You're handing over the equitable title, that's the value of the land, and you're handing over the controlling interest. So that means someone has a higher authority than you. I know. So they have the controlling interest. That's why they can tell you what you can and cannot do with the land, because they have the controlling interest. And the only title that you've got left is the right to use the land with conditions. Now, this title is called what is referred to as a fee simple title within an estate. This is the title that the average farmer's got. And you go, what does fee simple mean? Well, it's an old term. It's an old English term. And it basically means there's fees to pay on the land. That's what it basically means. Fees simple, fees to pay. And because you're buying a title within an estate, the average farmer doesn't have an estate, so it can't be his estate. It's someone else's, and it would be the king's estate.
Right.
So you've bought a title to live upon the king's land or within his estate with fees to pay, and this is where the tax comes into play, right?
Right.
So you see the path. Because you don't own the land. You've not bought it. You don't own anything else, but you've bought a title within the king's estate. And by the way, they tell you this because, you know, when you want to buy a house, where do you go? An estate agent.
Estate agent.
They're telling you in your face, Estate agent. So what does agent mean? Agent means they're working for someone else higher up, which will be the principal, the boss, which will be the king. And of course, estates. So they're selling titles within an estate. That's why they're estate agents. And then they'll even tell you on the listing. So you look up a house and it'll say a little word, and it'll say tenure. And you go, what does tenure mean? And tenure means the right to hold something. So you've been granted permission to hold something. And you go, what am I holding? You're holding the title. All right. And you go, okay, then what type of title am I holding? Obviously, fee simple.
Yeah.
But it will also be referred to as either freehold or leasehold.
Leasehold.
And they're telling you again. So they've just told you you're getting tenure, which is you've got the right to hold, and you're freehold. So you're holding something free, which what does that mean? It means you're holding a title to the king's estate, which you can hold without a time limit. You're free to hold it. Yeah. And we'll get into the inheritance tax in a minute. But the other one, leasehold, what does that mean? Again, you can hold a title to the king's estate to live on the land, but with a time limit, normally 99 years. So after 99 years, it goes back to the king. You don't own it. So what does freehold mean? Well, there's no time limit, but you're holding the king's title. And remember, you've given it away. So the king has the equitable title and the controlling interest. So, because you've agreed, if you unfortunately pass away and you hand that title over to your children, the king says, oh, that's my title. Got to pay up. That is where the inheritance tax comes from. And this is where Parliament comes into place. And because they hold all the cards, remember, they've got the controlling interest. So they can dictate the policy now and say, oh, yeah, we're going to put it up. What are you going to do? Here's the good news. The title that you've been tricked into buying is literally worthless. It's got no value. Why is that? Because it's got no signature on it, and that means it has no legal standing. This means you can turn your back on the title itself and say, I don't even want it. Land registry, not even interested anymore. This also means that the land and the property that the farmers are using right now, and this is for everybody, this is property developers and everybody, they have the right to claim the land because the land is unclaimed. Why is it unclaimed? There's no legal standing on any of this paperwork. It's a bluff. And we can get into how to claim your land back if you want. If you've got any questions so far. I know it's mind-bending.
It is, Mum. And I think what I was just going to say on that, Pete, is one of the things you just said there about, like effectively that title's worthless.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like holding the logbook to your car, isn't it?
Yes.
The logbook states on it, no proof of ownership.
Correct. It tells you on the document.
So, all right, okay. So, for idiots like me that sit upon a piece of land that we might rent, we might own under ownership, we might lease under leasehold, yeah. And obviously leases, like you say. So if we look at the inheritance tax side here, once it transfers from, let's say, parents to children, the king or the government, whoever that hierarchy is, has the right then to tax you on the grounds that you don't own the land.
Correct.
Just correct. When I was a kid, I remember trying to learn to play chess.
Yeah.
And one of my mum's friends was trying to teach me how to play chess, and I could never win the game, right? And this is exactly that game of chess, isn't it? Because they've got the rules, they've written the rules. Every now and again, you might get there's the rules, but you never get to see the rules of that list. So you're always batting against the wicket. So obviously, you guys have now had time to break this stuff down, work through a lot of this, and to come up with a system. What you're now saying, we can now professionally challenge this in the right way. Okay, so how do we go about that? Because obviously, I remember someone putting on one of my YouTube comments, and I had heard this from a couple of people where they said you can apply to land registry to become. I think basically what it was that when you sign the deeds when you buy a piece of land, you say who is the local authority, and you say the local authority is, like for me, it would be Suffolk County Council. But presumably, and from what I now understand, that authority could be yourself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, this is just for me. It's just I understand from your side. This isn't rocket science.
No.
The problem is, Pete. I think we'd all agree that the education system as it stands at the moment is deliberately designed to dumb people down. It's deliberately designed for people not to have a fucking clue, so that they don't challenge the system. And over the last 100 years, that's really been pushed through the mire. Yeah. And I find that through things like BS parking tickets, and you parked on a yellow line, you didn't pay your TV license. People have become so bamboozled by all this paperwork and it's law, it's legislation, it's legal. They just pay it because it's easier to pay it than try and deal with the fallout of trying to work your way through the mire. Yes. So I guess, as the farmer sat here, I guess, and hopefully, this goes out to more farmers and they can look at this with a bit more confidence, I suppose, is the right terminology. From my experience of this, everything I've gone to challenge, I've gone, oh my God, dare I do that? And I guess from this side, if you guys are in the background, that's going to give people a lot more of that daring streak, what we now need more so than ever to rightfully want to challenge the authority and to do that en masse, because that's the other thing in this, isn't it? From what I understand of this is that, I was on the first march that went into London for the farmers, 60,000 people there. Absolutely fantastic. Yes. Now let's say that on one day, 60,000 people challenged land registry.
You got it, mate.
That would blow their bloody minds.
Yes. Now you've got it. This is a numbers game. This is where we've all got to unite together. All the farmers, the truckers, the people, all of us have said, we're not doing it anymore. Yeah. Where's the contract? Where did I sign on this document to allow a bunch of psychopathic politicians to govern me? I don't remember signing this.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. So I want to I was listening to you and I was making some notes as we was going along. So I want to touch on a few things. Now, this starts with the mindset. Okay, this is what the Sovereign Project is all about. The Sovereign Project, its main goal is to help people get rid of the slave mentality, because everyone has been brainwashing, as you mentioned it, from school, TV, all the food is dumbing you down. We all know this. You shouldn't be eating supermarket food. And we'll get into that later if we've got time.
Yeah.
So, this is serious. If they take the farmers out, we're all going to starve to death. So, we've got to get together, and we've all got to work together. So everybody in the truth movement, in the freedom movement, forget egos, forget if you disagree with me. I don't care. We've got to all work together now.
100%.
So we've got to do it. So now let's talk about authorities, because you were using the word authorities. Obviously, there's no such thing as authorities. So this is a test that I normally ask somebody. I'll ask someone, see if they're sovereign or they are slave-minded. And one of the questions is, where does authority come from? The sovereign will say, from me. Authority comes from me. The slave-minded will go, oh, it's a government, it's a council. I go, no, you've got to fix your slave mentality before I can help you. You've got to get rid of that. So, no such thing as authorities. All councils are just normal corporations, just like McDonald's. That's all they are. So you have to understand this to be able to play the game. Because when you realize that a council is just like McDonald's, they have a company number, they have a DUNS number, the limited companies. We all know that now. It's all over the internet. If you've done any research, we know this. So these councils are just like McDonald's. So can McDonald's just tell us to pay them? Of course not. Because if McDonald's said that, we said, where's the bill? Where's the contract? Where's the paperwork that I have to pay? So now we know this, we can challenge the council. So earlier we're talking about that the councils want to register birds and do all this nonsense with chickens, and right? Well, instead of fighting it, so we should not petition. If you petition, you're accepting the obligation what you're petitioning against.
Yes.
Yeah. If you protest, you're doing the same thing. You accept the obligation that you're protesting against. People have got to stop doing this, and you've got to stop giving excuses. People give excuses like, oh, well, I need me chickens for, my eggs. Well, you've just lost, Because if the council's saying you've got to lock your chickens down and you say, well, I can't do it because this, that, the other, you're giving an excuse, which means you accept the obligation. You see how this game is played?
Yeah, yeah.
So what you need to be doing is if the council say, oh, you've got to lock your chickens down and you've got to register your chickens, you've got to say, where's the contract? Where's the contract that I signed that I agreed to this? It's like mandates. Remember all the mandates when people...
Yeah, sure.
Remember all that? This is when I set the Sovereign Project up. Because I was explaining to people, you just can't be mandated. You have to agree to the mandate. You have to sign a contract, agree to the mandate, and then the mandate is applied to you. It's all done through consent. Same thing with all this chicken stuff. You're locking chickens down and all that. Would you what? Where's the contract? When did I agree to this? But you're right. It's a numbers game. If one person tries to do this on their own, the system's so far corrupt now, you'll just be trampled over.
Yes.
So this requires all the farmers to get together and say, we are going to stand side by side. And if one farmer is targeted by stupid bailiffs or corrupt police, the rest of the farmers are turning up with tractors. We're going to block them in and say, where's the documentation? What gives you the right to say we've got to lock down our chickens or we've got to inject our cows with this bloody toxic stuff? That's how we win this game. We challenge the contract. We challenge the obligation.
It's mind blowing. I guess from my side, you know, someone who's brought up in an average 2.3 family, you know, parents came out of the Second World War. Parents struggled to get ahead. They bought their council house. They've done everything. You know, they probably bought the shares in the gas and, you know, in British Telecom when they had the opportunities and did those things to try and better themselves and get further ahead and to make sure we as their children didn't struggle as much as they did. And I look at my children and think how I've struggled to do, you know, what they needed when they were little. And, you know, and now I see them doing this. And I think to myself, what? For fucking what? This is all bullshit. You know, and when you start to look at the numbers of this and you understand what you pay out in the course of a year for tax and what, you know, really, you know, I don't know how many times in a lifetime you get challenged if you didn't pay anything, right? But if you said, well, every year I pay £5,000 in tax, right? And I'm just going to put that in a deposit account or in fact, in gold under the bed or wherever, because the gold would be, you know, more secure and it would be, you know, it'd still be there when you want it rather than the government or someone else spending it along the way and forgot to mention it to you because you didn't have a contract. So I guess for me, well, I think a lot of this is mind-blowing. A lot of this is really down to common sense, isn't it? And that's the thing, what I feel, Pete, has been removed. And they've deliberately taken away the common sense and common law and people's understanding of common law to bring in legislations that people think of those common laws.
Yes.
So, okay, so I guess for myself then, the next question is, Pete, what and how does the average farmer sitting here today, I'm sat here, I own some land, I don't, but, you know, let's pretend I did. If I did, and that I want to make sure that is truthfully and honestly and protected for me, for my family, for my children, great-grandchildren, all the way down the line, how do I start that process to step from living in their world and under their bureaucracy and, you know, legislation and all the other bullshit? How do I step out of that and take the farm into the sovereignty that I'm in control of with my own sovereignty intact? Right,
yes. It is going to take two things. It's going to take some dedication and it's going to take some studying. So the first thing these farmers have got to do is realize what you're realizing. I don't know anything and I'm going to have to educate myself. Okay. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So you have to educate yourself. So put aside a few hours in the evening after. I know farmers do long hours, but you can spare, you know, to save your farm. I'm sure you can spare a few hours a week and, you know, for your kids and all the rest of it. So start studying this. You can go to the website, which is the sovereignproject.live. There's some free information you can download. There's also information on there where you can find your local sovereign project workshop. You might find one in your area. These are people who know what I know, and they're willing to share this and you can meet others. So we can get organized. So you get organized.
Yeah.
This is a network that we're creating. So learn basic contract law. Again, this information is easy to understand, and there's downloads, free downloads on the website. Learn basic contract law, understand what a contract is, understand the power of your signature and how to protect it. Once you know this, understand the basic rules of commerce. Again, this information is on the website. You can download it. I don't have time to go into it right now, but just the basics. One of the basic rules, in fact, I'm going to give you 2 basic rules. There's 12 hidden rules within commerce, and they're called hidden because the average person doesn't know about them. One rule, no involuntary servitude. This is in commerce. This is their legal system. This means you cannot be forced to be a slave, but you can consent to be a slave. If you want to be a slave, not a problem. Yeah. If you want to give away your rights and give away your estate, then you can do that, and I can't stop that. If you want to give your freedom of speech away, that's your choice. This is the
which I guess is what we've been hoodwinked into at the moment.
Yes.
En masse, we're seeing this, aren't we?
Yes, that's right. Now, this is one of the paradoxes of rights. Everybody has the right to give away their rights. That's the paradox. That's the problem with them. Yeah. This is how the government works. If you want to give away your rights, fine. So you got to learn it. Don't go looking for your rights, people. This is another thing we teach you. Rights come from you. So if I say to you, you have the right to privacy, and you said, oh, where do I look that up? I'll go, you've lost the game. You can't go looking for your rights. They come from me. I say so. I've got the right to privacy. I've got the right to ownership. I own that car. I own the chickens, that sort of thing, right? So you've got to learn this stuff, get educated. Also, all the farmers, you've got to get networked, get involved, get more farmers involved. We need network, because like I mentioned earlier, if you're on your own, and even if you do your paperwork perfectly, the justice system. Yeah, I know.
The injustice system.
Yeah, the injustice system. We'll just trample over you because there's only one of you.
Yeah. I think what we do know here, Pete, is that as the farmers have proven, especially across Europe and the world, and now sort of coming to roost in this country, farmers do have a sovereignty to stand together. They have this loyalty to come together. They all want the same thing at the end of the day, and I genuinely believe that the government has, and not, I don't mean our government, I mean those who have elected themselves as a world government, have very much misunderstood farmers as people. Because for me, my mum will ring me at night, she'll say, what have you been up to today, darling? Well, at 4 o'clock this morning, I was picking vegetables. At 6 o'clock this morning, I opened the shop. At 7 o'clock, I was a midwife. At 8 o'clock, I was a plumber. At 9 o'clock, I was the electrician. 10 o'clock, I was the vet. Yeah, and this goes on all day. We can twist, move, manipulate, and get around things really quickly. And we saw this in the pandemic, how so many farms opened shops within days and got loads of stock where supermarkets ground to a standstill. The bureaucracy, from my side, what's involved in government, and especially while they're trying to impose bigger things and bigger agendas, is very slow at being able to turn. And that, I feel, is where we have the strength in numbers. Because if I'm right here, if we was to bring together 50,000 farmers tomorrow that say, do you know what? I'm not bloody having this anymore. I'll tell you what. I'm going to drive my tractor, but where I'm going to drive it to is whether that be, the post office to send the paperwork off to land registry, wherever that might be, but having that understanding and that knowledge, because let's face it, we're only going to get a few people break the mold on this, and then we're going to have an avalanche of people going, come help me, come help me, come help me, protect me, do this. And I don't think that we're a million miles away from people wanting that now. I think that, I've certainly seen a massive, massive shift. Obviously, we launched the website, as you know, a little while ago, about bringing food and the public together via farmers. And the numbers are swelling on that. Yeah. And that says to me that change is afoot.
It is.
So what we need to do, for me and you sat here talking to each other, I think I'm right in this from my side. I'm looking for a solution.
Yes.
You guys have a solution that you're saying if people come to the table with you guys, you can assist them, whether that's via local networks and meeting local sovereign people like yourself. Yes. And we can work a way forward for farmers to be able to sit down and protect that land for the future generations to be able to grow food, which we know they're so desperately trying to stop.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay.
We just got to get enough of these farmers who want to do it. And I think you're right. The rest of the farmers will follow. And I think this movement in this country, I don't like using the UK because that's a corporation.
Sure.
I reckon the rest of the world will watch what's going on. And they're going, what's going? I'm going to use the word England, but don't want to get too deep. And they're going to say, what's going on in England? And then other countries are going to go, oh, hang on a minute. Do we own our land? Oh, no, you don't. Because this system that we find ourselves in here is the same in every single country.
Well, I was going to say, surely anywhere, my partner's Nigerian, and some of the things what she talks to me about blows my mind because I think that's only down to colonialism.
Yes.
Now, surely, if that's the case, it isn't just Nigeria. We're talking about anywhere the British Empire went, which is, let's face it, 90% of the bloody planet was at some point in the past under British sovereignty. So that must be that if this pack of cards starts to tumble, and I don't know the answer to this, Pete, but I bet I'm right in saying this. I would say under this system, what they have set up, there is still taxes paid today from other countries back to the UK.
Yeah.
Under you owe this money to the king under taxes.
Yes.
Even after the American Civil War and everything else, I guarantee that those things still sit in place.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so you can understand if this pack of cards starts to fall, oh, gee, it's going to be a big panic.
This will change the direction of the whole planet. We'll head towards freedom because at the minute we're heading towards slavery, a dystopian nightmare. That's where we're going. And we've got the power, especially the farmers, because you've got the power. You outnumber the government. You hold the key. It really is.
The equipment.
You've got the equipment, you've got the numbers, and more important, you control the food. And we all know that if these globalists know this, if you control the food, you control the people. That is what the globalists are after, right?
Yeah.
So this is World War III right now. We're fighting now, but it's a completely different war. And we're going to do it through paperwork and the power of the pen. Yeah. Everyone can do it sat at home on their desk writing notices going, where's the contract?
I mean, hey, am I right to assume this? Because one of the things which I know a lot of people have challenged things like council tax and things like that and not paid bills and things.
Yes.
Whether that's right or wrong, whether you can do it or can't do it, I'll leave aside, right? However, one thing I'd love to know is if you're sat working for the local authority and you get one letter a week saying, I'm sorry, I'm challenging that system, and then you get 10 letters a week, and then you get 100 letters a week, then you get 1,000 letters a week. Surely, as a member of the public working for the authority, you've got to sit there and go, hang on a minute.
Yes.
There must be something in this because everyone's challenging the system. Yes. We've seen it over your BBC license as a classic example. People are now starting to wake up to the fact that, well, actually, I don't need this.
No.
You know, I mean, I haven't had one for years and definitely won't ever. I don't even have a television, but if I had, you know, but so I guess that excitement from my side, I can see how that can escalate because we've seen this with other things like the TV license. You know, years ago, you know, when everyone, you go back, you know, when I was little, Nan always had it tucked behind the clock on the mantelpiece in case the man knocked on the door. You know, and when you think that was just down to fear, nothing else. Now, I think that has moved anyway. That fear, what was there 50 years ago, of the authority, I don't genuinely believe is there anymore anyway. Not in the same realms that Nan was, you know, if there'd have been a knock at the door, my Nan would have been at the door with it in her hand in case it was them, you know? And I think to myself, wow, you know, they were really programmed, but I guess from my side, they only had 3 channels.
Yes.
Right? They had
no internet back then.
No. there was no way, you know, I mean, I remember when my kids were little and they said to me, you know, about wanting a computer, and I was like, they'll never catch on.
Never catch on. These computers never fad.
and then as they became, you know, they started, they kept pestering me. We went and got a first computer, got it connected to a dial-up, you know.
Yeah, I got one of them as well.
But now you look at it, here we are talking to each other. So you can see how things progressively change.
Yes.
So if we can get that progression of change on not only this level, but get that progression of change in the masses of the people to awoke,
Yes.
you know, to awaken, then I think the power will be that the public, and one of the things that I'm seeing, Pete, from the new website, is a lot of people, when I put the videos on social media, a lot of people ask, general public members asking me one question: Mark, how can we assist the farmers?
Oh, wow. We need those people.
Right?
Yes.
So that says to me that the public that are awake,
yes,
understand what's truly going on, and that this is a land grab. This is about smashing the food system.
Yes.
It isn't about inheritance tax. We all know that. That's just a byproduct of the bullshit, right?
You're right.
It's like, you know, they chuck things like bird flu in, or, you know, we got rid of the tax on the tax allowance on red diesel, all these little things to just keep packing away at farmers so that they eventually just go, oh, I just can't deal with this anymore.
Yes.
You know, I'm old.
Yes.
I haven't got any kids to leave the farm to, where they would have found someone, you know, they would have thought, oh, that lad who worked for me 20 years ago was really nice. I could leave him the farm, you know, because he's always been about in the background helping me. And that's all been destroyed.
Yes.
Along with the family values and the farm values, because people always saw a farm. It's a bit like, my parents have always lived in the same house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ever since I was born. So if I've ever been in the position that I, how should we say, didn't quite make it in that relationship, I always had somewhere to go home. Right. And farms are very much like that. They've always been that place where you could go away to school, to college, university, but you always came back to your roots.
Yep.
Even if that took 10, 20 years to come back, because there wasn't a place for you on the farm at that point, because dad was running the farm, or granddad, whatever. But eventually they get to the point they need to clock off and retire. That's when people start to come back. And I'm seeing this massively in the farming community at the moment, that a lot of the people who went away were the parents who wanted no place of it, but the grandchildren who are awake are desperate to get back on those family farms.
Right.
So this, to me, is, how do we involve
the
public, you know,
yes,
and involve them in making this happen?
Yes. Now, absolutely. The people out there have to get involved. Now, I get this a lot. I ask people, and they say things like, "Oh, what can I do?" You know, all this. I say, you have a voice. Yep. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has access to the internet now. Everyone has a voice. We've got a voice. We're saying stuff. So everyone should be doing what we're doing and spreading the word. So if people want to do something, share this video. That's an easy thing for you to do. Yeah. Just take the link from YouTube or whatever and put it into Facebook groups and Instagram groups and farmer groups, and do it from, get a coffee, sit at home and say, right, I'm going to spend an hour now online and I'm going to start sharing stuff. I'm going to start spreading the word. Yeah. You get millions of people doing that, this comes to an end.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I mean, I did a video the other day and we're talking about Arla and about the, you know, as a product, and, you know, and I think we titled it, "They're Poisoning You." Yes. Right. And it went out to about 60,000 people viewed that video. So from my side, that was one of the biggest videos I've done, apart from my two geese who I filmed on the farm for 20 seconds, and they got 2.2 million views.
2.2 million.
You know,
well,
but they're professionals. You know, they do this for a living. But, you know, for 60,000 people now, let's just say, like you just said, Pete, 60,000 people watched that. Now, what about if they all shared it?
Exactly.
The power of that, suddenly we can get millions of people watching it. And millions of people understanding that not only, this isn't just about protecting farmers. No. This is about protecting the food supply. This is about protecting, you know, a way of life.
It is.
As, you know, for me, I think, you know, one thing I've had to deal with this year, obviously meeting a Nigerian lady. She comes to the table with certain beliefs about white people because of how she's been brought up, right? And do you know what? Her belief in British white people is stronger than mine. Right? And that says to me the programming that they've gone through, they genuinely don't think they were slaves. They think the white people did them a favor. And I'll tell you, and I'll just catch on this very quickly, right? Because my partner said to me one day, she said, I'm blessed to be in England. And I said, well, yeah, I can understand that for coming from Nigeria. She said, no, you don't understand. She said, you know, because I'll always say, yeah, but they had you under slavery and they did. She said, no, no, no. She said, listen, she said, had the British not have come, I couldn't have learned English as a language, and I wouldn't have been able to come here today, be with you, enjoy the beautiful things we do.
Yes.
That's down to programming, because I would be going, you absolute feckers. You know, I think she's the victim. She doesn't.
No.
So, you know, how do we change this, Pete? How do we?
Okay.
Because we're in the same position with the British public here. Put the Nigerian aside here. Put my partner aside. We're in the same position with the English people who have been brought up and bred and believe in the system, and the system is good. It's protected us since the Second World War not to go into war on our own land. Mm-hmm. We're not that stupid, you know, and it's protected us in a bubble, right? So yes. How do we get people to understand there is a whole host of bullshit what's gone on, that's they've been lied to so badly that everything, I think it's fair to say here, Pete, that everything we've been told is a lie.
It is. Absolutely it is. Everything's a lie. You've got to relearn everything. Everything. It's like one of the things I learned about cancer. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, it's trying to kill you. No, it's not. It's trying to save you. And you can reverse it. All this stuff is all coming out online. You're learning all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think we go back to your point. I think what we've got to do is we've got to try and separate the country from the people. This is where, because a country, but a lot of people don't realize what a country is. It's not the land. It's not the land. A country is a corporate jurisdiction that is placed upon the land and is run by a corporate government. So if you say to me, United States of America, what do I think of that? I'll say, well, I don't like the government, but I love the people. And like Russia, if you get, what do you think about Russia? I'll go, well, I don't like the Russian government, but I love the Russian people. I'm sure if I had a few vodkas with the Russian lads over there, I'd have a great night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the Chinese. People got, what do you reckon to the Chinese? I don't like the Chinese government. The Chinese people, I'll sit down at the table and have some sushi or whatever. I don't mind. I'm sure I'll have a good time. Yeah. You know, so we have to learn to separate governments and countries from the people. Because ultimately, us people, we all get along.
Because I suppose there's something in there in what you said earlier as well, Pete. You said about, you know, England.
Yeah.
It's England, Scotland, so Ireland. So presumably that's because that is when we're talking about the land, the United Kingdom is a corporation that has been formed to unite those lands under one ruling party that could then dictate what it wanted the legislation to be.
You got it. That's right.
Jesus.
And they trap you.
I feel like I've been bent over and raped.
Yes. When you figure this out, you go, oh my God. Because they will trap you, because they'll say something like, are you a British citizen? And if you say yes, you know, we're talking about forms earlier. You become you say you're a British citizen, you're now saying that you work for the UK corporation and you've got to do as you're told. That's how they do it. So I'm not a citizen. I'm not a civilian. I'm not a member of the public. I'm none of that. I'm not affiliated with any country. I don't. Oh, another thing, the Union Jack, that's another man's flag. It's not mine.
So you touched on this the other day on something I heard, and that's something that because obviously we have a beautiful big Union Jack flying outside our farm shop. Now, what we should really do is have a family coat of arms made, isn't it?
Yes.
And get that up there. That's what should happen.
That's what should happen. That's what you should have. Now, let me just touch on flags, which people don't understand. Remember, we were talking about legal standing earlier, about contracts, right? So you see a contract, legal standing. It's the same for a flag. A flag is supposed to represent the authority of a living, breathing man or woman, a sovereign. So going back hundreds and hundreds, well, probably thousands of years, that would be like a king. So the king would have the flag, and the flag would represent his authority. Now, authority means author of. So he would be author of the law within his kingdom, king of his dominion, kingdom. That's what the word means. And he is free in his freedom, free dominion. That's what it means, free domain. So the king would have his name, and that would be on the flag. And if you wave the flag, it meant you are subject to the king. You're under his rule. Fast forward to today, and you go, well, whose flag is it? Union Jack? I don't know. It's not King Charles, because King Charles is the King of England. It's not King of UK, is he?
Yeah.
So it's now become a corporate logo, the same as McDonald's. So if you fly the Union Jack or you put it on any of your produce, you're putting like the McDonald's symbol on your whatever you produced.
So you're building their brand awareness.
Yes, exactly. And they'll turn up and say, well, you owe us then. You owe us some commission for using the flag.
And I guess this is why the government has been kicking up about things like St. George's Day.
Yes.
And the use of the St. George's flag. And they're trying to diminish that, because obviously that's very much about the sovereignty of England, not about the greater, bigger picture. Correct. And, you know, I know there was this big thing outside all the council offices where they put up you know, the EU flags some time back, and obviously a lot of those have now been removed. Sure. But I hear they're going back up again, though, because, you know, our dear friend Mr. Starmer has put us back into the EU apparently. But you know, we've got to look at all of this, because surely if we could take back the land,
yes,
that farmers own,
correct,
then greater things could be achieved.
Yes. I mean, let's just spell it out for the farmers. I mean, here's the thing, farmers, if you're listening, is that if you take your land back and you actually do claim it, and to do that, you need your own flag, coat of arms, seal, court seal, that sort of stuff. Very easy to understand. Once you've got all that, that's your estate. You can then claim the land, use an affidavit, and then you create a deed. Now the land is yours. Now the bricks and mortar are yours. Now here's about your mortgage. Your mortgage is absolutely worth nothing. Zero. So you might have a £2 million mortgage, but it's got no value whatsoever, because we had this discussion the other night. Promissory notes, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no value here at all.
No value to it.
No value at all. And these promissory notes are not on the land. It's on the title, which you don't want anymore, because it's with the land registry. So you go, okay, land registry, you can keep that stupid title. I don't want it. I've got my land now, got my own flag on it. I'm not operating in the UK anymore. That means all your mortgages goes in the bin. I'm telling you, this system's so fragile. You just got to learn it.
Just so you know, this doesn't happen very often, but I'm actually speechless, right? So I find it hard to believe that I've been, I guess, tentatively digging at some of this.
Yes.
When I've heard different people talking about being in your sovereign state, and about, oh yeah, but you can do this with your logbook and you don't need a TV lot. And, you know, I'm quite brave, and I'll always be at the front going, yeah, they can sod that, I'm not paying it anyway. But I guess there is this whole thing on the other side of that the government relies on that fear to stop the masses rebelling.
Yes.
Because if they, you know, like when the riots kicked off, for instance, there's a classic example. When all that trouble kicked off, the government only had to imprison a handful of people, and everyone went, oh, I might just stop at home tonight.
Yes, I know.
You know, no, not saying the riots are right or wrong, but it went to very quickly prove how much control of the mind there is via fear.
Yes.
You know, and then when you have someone die in prison, for instance, that was an innocent person who shouldn't have been there. Yes. That installs that fear even deeper into people.
Yes.
Because they're like, God, that could have been me.
I know.
And so I guess people, like anything, Pete, you and I are clearly, because we're making this video, prepared to put our heads above the parapet.
We've done it.
You know, and I guess that this now needs a lot of people to be brave.
Yes, and stand up. Stand up, your ground.
Be counted, and be accountable for what needs to happen next. Because if none of us do anything, this is how I'm feeling. If nobody does anything about this land grab and about what they're trying to achieve as a result of the land grab, then by 2030, or even before that, I would say probably by 2027, it is going to be game over.
Yeah.
And
by the end of this decade.
Yeah, by the end of this decade, it's going to be too late to reverse this. I would say we're probably sailing close to the wind now. But what I would also say is that the masses, from what I see, are starting to awake. They know something isn't right, but they don't know what to do about it, how they fit into it, how brave they dare feel in it. I guess this is a bit like the last election when people, how did Reform get so many votes? Nobody really knows, but a lot of people did have the balls to go out and go, there's got to be a change. And whether it makes any difference voting or not, neither here nor there. But the people thought in unity, they stood together for something different. Right? And I guess that's where we are with this. What we need is now everybody to put their big boy pants on, the big girls' knickers on, and go. Because I look at this from my side, Pete. I'm a dad, I'm a granddad, and 10 years' time, I'll probably be a great granddad, right? Where does that leave my kids, my grandkids?
Oh, yeah.
Sailing into, because they have no idea what's going on there. They have very little to do with me as a result of my thoughts and feelings. I have pleasantries, but I don't get that, Dad, come around for dinner anymore, because they don't truly buy into what I have been outspoken about. And that saddens me, because the only reason I'm doing it is for them. I'm 56. If I die tomorrow, I will just put this out there right now that I am not suicidal. So
no.
if anything should happen to me, it wasn't an accident, right?
Yeah.
But it saddens me that here I am having to be brave for them, and they don't even understand in the slightest what's going on, and they're very much.
I know.
And I know I'm not alone on that. I speak to all of my friends. Pete, I've been looking through the demographics on our audience on YouTube, and 81% of our audience is above 55.
Right.
Right? Now, you could argue that that's brilliant because 11% of the younger generation have woke up. But isn't it sad that it's the people my age and above that actually get this? And I think that's down to two things. One, they came from children who went to war.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They ran up the fucking beach to make sure we could have some freedom. The other thing comes, in my opinion, is we remember what freedom was like.
Yes.
We remember as kids, we could go out and do what we want. If you got in trouble, the village copper give you a smack round the head, and by the time you got home and you thought to yourself, I'm not going to tell mum, she already knew because he'd already phoned her, right? But it was then it was over. It didn't matter. Now we don't have that same ability, I don't feel, as a nation, to be able to deal with the simplistic things. No. And to me, challenging the government should be a simplistic thing.
I agree.
Because they are there, and I hate to say this, as civil servants, it's in the bloody title. They're there to serve us. For some reason, that these councillors now think they're lords and ladies and well above the general public who go to the till and say, please, can I pay the council tax? This is now about us taking back our ownership, us taking back everything that they've robbed from us, including freedom, democracy, financial issues, everything, what they've stolen from us over the past probably 80 to 100 years without us really realising what was going on. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, buddy. It is up to the individual to stand up now. They have to stand up. And I want to be absolute, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. We're not talking about violence. We're not talking about
none
of that. You do it peacefully with your pen. Yep. So you'll actually do it with your paperwork, and you'll start using that, and you stand up using your paperwork. For example, this whole thing can come to an end very easily if there was enough sovereign men and women within, let's just call it, the jurisdiction of the UK. If they understood basic contract law, they could serve notice on the politician within their area and mandate the politician to cease and desist. And if the politician failed, then you would be all right to sue the politician by name. This is very important. You've got to understand. You can't just sue the government because that's a waste of time. It's illegal.
Yeah. They just hide behind it, don't they?
You're absolutely right. You're wasting your time. But as soon as you start suing these employees, these politicians by name, and you hold them personally accountable for their actions, like 15-minute cities and ULEZ and all the rest of the garbage and 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and all the rest of it, that's it. And I had it from a friend of mine, ex-MP, was in, I won't mention his name or anything, but he said to me, the one thing that politicians fear the most is being personally held accountable.
Yeah.
And that is by a person serving notice. No appeals. No, I'm telling, no more 15-minute cities. No more drag queens in bloody
children's schools, whatever it is. Yeah.
End of. So all people have to do is get angry, put it on their documentation and send it on. You get a few 100,000 of those getting sent out weekly. Boom, this comes to an end. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. But people have just got to stand the ground. Me and you, we've stood up. We're now speaking out. That's what other people have to do. And there are thousands of people out there speaking.
Yeah.
But we need more.
Okay. Can I play devil's advocate here, Pete?
Go ahead, mate.
Let's say I'm Molly Mop and I'm feeling a little bit brave.
Yes.
And, put the farmers aside here, just general public here, and I'm feeling a little bit brave and I want to support the farming community. Obviously, from my side, one of the things that I've set up is the website so that we can connect farmers with customers so that we can remove supermarkets and the system, yes. Right? Is there any, for want of a better word, standardized letters that are available to the public to be able to say, let's say a letter that's pre-written to say, I want to challenge my local MP and get them to do something about this in Parliament. Is there a letter, what you guys have written or could potentially write, that is available as a download that people could go to the site, download this, fill out their name and sign it at the bottom and send it to their local MP?
Right.
And I guess the other side of that, is it worth people doing that?
Right. Now, here's the problem, okay? That's a templated letter. Now, people have got to understand what authority is. Remember, I mentioned it before, is authority is author of. So if I write something on a piece of paper, I am the author. That's where the authority is, right? Now, if people all send in exactly the same letter, the government are going to laugh at that and go, this is exactly the same template letter. You didn't write this.
Yeah.
So the government will then know that everyone's bluffing. They're not sovereign. That's the problem with template letters.
Okay.
So what I would try and suggest is, this is why I said earlier, people have just got to study a little bit. I know most people watching this have probably never written a letter in their lives, but I'm saying it's time you learn. Stop using websites, emails, texts, mobile phone, all that. Stop doing that. The people at the very top of this system don't use any of that. It's all paperwork. And when Prince Charles became King Charles, did he sign his finger on an iPad? Of course not. That's for the plebs. Don't be signing iPads. He got a proper purple.
They brought out the quill.
Yes, that's right. With a seal and a proper document. And come on, people. So, like you mentioned earlier, you've got to put on your big boy pants, learn the basics. Now, here's the thing. I mentioned earlier about the workshops that are all over the country. In fact, they're global now. We've got Sovereign Project workshops all over the country and all over the world. See if you can find a local one, learn some basics, and just have a go at writing it. You don't have to sound like a lawyer. It doesn't matter. Just write it from the heart and just say, look, I'm putting you on notice. I'm telling you, stop doing this. Otherwise, I will sue you.
Yeah.
Sign it. Billy Bob. Boom. Away it goes. So if all the letters, all the notices coming in, if they're all different and all written, then they will know.
And all handwritten.
Exactly. They're all individual. That's individual people. It's like voting doesn't matter because your vote is worth nothing because it's the same form. It's a cross.
You just got your cross in the corner.
Yes, and what is the cross? The signature of the simpleton.
Yeah,
which means you don't know who to vote for, so you put a cross there and say you choose. It's pointless voting. So yeah, people have got to get pen to paper. I mean, you can use a computer, you can type it out, but you sign it and you tell them, cease and desist. Stop doing this, or I'm going to sue because you're violating my rights. You don't use Human Rights Act. Don't use Constitution stuff. Don't do that, because if you quote a Constitution, you're under the authority of the person who wrote the Constitution. Because if you say I've got constitutional rights, well, they're privileges given to you by the person who wrote the Constitution. Stop doing it.
Let me backtrack a bit. And something that I've been asked this a lot by people, both asked and advised by people who I think don't know enough against what they're talking about, like myself.
Sure.
So one thing that I've heard a lot about is sticking the farm into a limited company to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with limited companies is obviously there is the importance of paying corporation tax. And if you transfer the wealth of a farm at millions of pounds, you end up giving a whole lot on the balance sheet.
I know.
So I don't think that's the answer.
Nope.
Another thing I've been advised about is trusts. Now, I understand trusts a little bit, but, a tiny, I know that my pension and my life insurances are all in trusts. Mm-hmm. That was something what was done purposely. Mm-hmm. And I'm told at the time when I took them out, that was the right thing to do, whether or not it was. But, is a trust something that, because it sits in the word, doesn't it?
Yes.
A trust. This is something we can believe in.
Yes. Well, you've got to say what type of trust, because you've got registered trusts, statutory trusts, private trusts, trusts operating as foundations. So it depends on how it's structured. And also you've got to say, what are you actually putting in the trust? So we mentioned earlier that, say for the car, you've got a car, but you've got the logbook. You can put the logbook into trust, but that's not the car. The car itself is not in trust. The logbook is. Yeah. What does that say? Registered keeper. And that's all you're putting in there.
So am I right then in what you've just said, that if I was a landowner, in my belief, mm-hmm. and I go along and I say, right, I'm going to put the farm into a trust, mm-hmm. what I'm actually putting into the trust is just the paperwork created by the office that deals with the paperwork for owning land registry.
Exactly.
So the farm is still no more protected than it was before.
No, not really. And if you don't know how to use a trust, a court will split it apart and take everything out of it. So, right. Yeah, trusts are only good if you know how to use them. And the most secure trust, this is, remember we were talking about dukes earlier, and they don't pay tax and all the rest of it. Yeah, because they operate at a higher level. Remember, the average person has no estate. You're considered a pleb, which is a type P on your passport. You seen that type P? You're plebeian, you're pauper. So you're the lowest of the low. So you have to create your estate. Once you've created your estate, which is your flag, coat of arms, your seal, all of this, you've now created your estate. What you can then do is you can create your own personal deeds. So the deed to your house, the deed to your car, deed to your tractor, all this. You create the deeds.
Right.
And then you will put that in a trust, which is operating in your estate outside of the legal system.
Right.
You see how that works? And then, of course, if you pass away, then the trust hands everything over to your kids because it's your trust operating in your estate. That's how it should work. But if you've got a trust operating within the legal system, written by a solicitor, he will tie himself in. By the way, how many times have you heard that solicitors pay themselves out of someone's trust and they suck all the money out? Yeah, because you've got a bloody barrister or a lawyer to write it. So he knows what he's doing. So he'll make sure he gets his 20%.
Well, that's a whole group of people who just self-protection, isn't it?
Yes.
They all just look after each other. It's an old boys club. We all know what the bar is. The bar is no more than a limited company, is it?
Correct. That's right. You can look this up. You're absolutely right. But when you figure this system out, you can play the game. Because look at it. The people at the very, very top of this pyramid of power, they have coat of arms, they have seals, they have flags. They even put the flags in your face. Even Porsche has a flag. They put it on the car. You know, Ferrari has a flag. So these big families, they have flags and seals and all of that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just for pretty pictures. It ain't just because it looks cool. There's an actual meaning behind it. And you should start putting your coat of arms on your documentation. So that's where it should be. In fact, your flag should be on it. There's your flag and boom. And then once you've created your estate, you can have diplomatic immunity. So when you fly, you're not going to be queuing. They can't check your bags. You're not going to be undoing your shoelaces and taking your belt off and getting felt up anymore. No, diplomatic immunity.
Oh, so there is disadvantages then.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say, okay.
Okay, so just on this note then, so you made the point earlier that you're running these courses around the country.
Yep.
What's the cost of that?
Right, if you go to a local workshop in your area, it's free.
Right.
Now, these are volunteers. Now, you can look them up. If you go on the website, there's a page that says workshops, and it'll show where they're all operating and running. And we've also got some chess clubs as well, which is slightly different. But there's still people offering help. Now, all we ask is, look, these are volunteers. These are people who have found a venue in a pub somewhere or whatever, and they will meet up once a week, and they're willing to teach you this.
Sure.
Tip them a drink.
Yeah, yeah.
We do this in Leicester. Everyone tips me a drink at the end of the night. You know, a little glass goes round and couple of quid goes in, and I really appreciate it. Tip them a drink. Now, if you can't get to one of those workshops, we do have an online course. Now, that is not free. That's £65 for the whole 22-week course. So if you want to do that.
22-week course.
22-week course, and we will take you through the whole thing of learning contracts and notices and affidavits.
So that's about £3 a course.
That's right.
Okay. So, and now for someone here who has spent over the years thousands of pounds on personal development, on buying books and CDs, and which I believe have done me good. They've certainly awoken me to where I am today. I've spent thousands. £3 a session doesn't seem a lot of money. And when you think that, I don't know, but a pint of beer must be £6, this to me seems like a fairly good investment. And, you know, for someone who, farmers don't like to spend a lot of money, it's fair to say, my partner will say to me, you know, are you going to get rid of them shoes yet? What? No, I'm going to glue them back together, you know. We don't like spending money. So for me, £65 is not a very big investment for the potential of what we could save here. Yes. Because, you know, when this comes down to, you know, if a farmer is sitting on land, what is going to go, you know, potentially over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years into inheritance tax. And yes, things may change again and legislation might change and a different puppet brigade might get in. They never turn taxes back because it's an easy target, right? It's never going to happen, no matter what they tell you, right? So this is here to stay. And we know why it's here to stay, because it's been pushed down from above, so it needs to stay. So for £65, and how long is a course?
Yeah, so it's between 2 and 3 hours. So there'll be a PowerPoint presentation with me, and I'll go through the PowerPoint. All this information is downloadable for free.
Yeah.
And I will go through the basics. So the 22-week course is set up for someone who knows nothing. So you're completely fresh.
Yeah.
So we go through the different levels of law, what law is, signatures, difference between public and private, affidavits, notices, and we go all the way through to the end. And at the end, we'll even show you how to do the lien process. And it shows you how you can actually sue people on your own without using a lawyer or a solicitor. So the whole 22-week course, you can do all of that. Like I say, it's just over £3 a course. And
so basically, we're talking about two investments here. One, £65, which to me isn't an investment. That's, you know, that's a night out. Yep. That's a Chinese meal for me and my partner, right?
Yep.
That's the realism of that. The other one, if you're talking about potentially 60 hours plus of study time to save your family's livelihood,
yes,
and your family's because most farms, you know, are not first generation; they're second, third, fourth generation.
Yeah.
So, you know, the people who have worked that land before you, who have, you know, like me, got calluses on my hands and, you know, bloody can't walk properly because of having a bad back, where I've been bent over doing stupid shit in the rain and, you know, the frosty weather and everything else.
Yeah.
The pain what them people have gone through, you're protecting what they did to make sure you could survive in the future.
Yes.
And that to me is very little, you know, because people will go and spend £50,000 on getting a solicitor to protect them over setting up trusts and things like this. It's thousands.
Oh yeah.
When really you're no further forward at all than when you started.
Correct. Correct. And that's right. And that's where
this is a sad situation, isn't it?
I know. That's why I've always said, since knowledge is power, you have to learn this. So to spend a few hours a week, one evening a week, and say that evening I'm just going to learn this. And after a few weeks, 22 weeks, you'll be up to speed, and it'll blow your mind, and then you're on your way. So the problem is people have just been handing their responsibility to other people, like solicitors and lawyers, and of course, they've been having your pants down. Yeah, because you don't know any different.
It's everything what we fear, isn't it? You know, whether if you're self-employed, you must have an accountant. You can't submit your paperwork without an accountant. What? Of course you can. Of course you might not know how to do it, but you can do it. You know, it's no different. You know, I've stood in Crown Court and I've represented myself.
Yes.
All right, I kind of won. but it did. What I did do was I did it. I've stood in magistrates' courts dozens of times and won my case. All right, yes, I've gone dozens of times and lost, but I didn't know enough about what I was arguing. And I am someone who needs to go through something to find out the truth. Sure. How does the system really behave when this happens? What's the next level of paperwork that comes after that? Because I'm someone who, you know, I don't proudly say this, but I've been bankrupt twice. And twice I've been bankrupt because I didn't understand the system.
Right.
And how the system was stacked against me.
Yes.
I've advised hundreds of people since my bankruptcies on how to stay out of it, or if they are in a position they've got to go through it, how to do that without coming out losing what I did. Right. So for me, I look at it probably like yourself, and I think to myself, all right, I've taken a kicking in court occasionally, but that's life. What I have managed to do is save hundreds upon hundreds of other people getting the same kicking. And for me, that was worth the kicking I took. And this is no different. This is no different at all. You know, there's going to be a few people in this undoubtedly who are going to get a kicking.
I know.
But they're not on their own. Farmers need to understand they're not in this alone. This is the biggest thing, what I think, you know, that I find in all of this. Everyone I talk to, I just don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do about it. That's why people go and bloody hang themselves, because they feel that they're so alone, and they're not.
No,
there is good people like yourself out there, Pete, that do have the, you know, the remedies, the answers, the solutions. And and like I say, it might be that some of us have to get a kicking on the way through this. But if enough people take the battering, you know, when Gandhi wanted to stop the British government not letting them have salt, they didn't fight. They just peacefully protested, and every one of them took a battering until the soldiers got to the point they wouldn't hit anybody else.
Yes.
That's the point we've got to get to, as far as I'm concerned. There needs to be no violence in this. We just need to get the first people over the hurdles, and then the masses who are on the bad side of this will go, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep writing to these people telling them they're in the wrong. I can't keep serving them with court paperwork. I can't represent these people in court because I know they're right.
Correct.
And we've got to get to that point where this all breaks.
Yes, there will be a tipping point when you get enough people involved. And even if anyone is watching this right now, if you're still fearful, look, if you don't do anything, the government's going to take everything anyway. Your farm's gone. They're going to take your house, your car. You won't be able to eat meat. It's cricket burgers and all the rest of it. Central bank. You've got to fight. You've got to. Especially as a man. If you're a man and you're not fighting, I'm going to look at you and go, what's wrong with you? You're supposed to fight. So, yeah. I'm hoping there's enough men out there that's going to stand up and say enough's enough, because I'm up to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, Pete, as we sort of come to a conclusion on all of this, we must be wrapping up towards an hour.
Yeah, we're getting,
You know, we need people now to be brave enough to go on that website. What was the website address?
Yeah, it's called thesovereignproject.live.
Okay.
And there's a whole load of information. There's contact email addresses. There's, like I say, workshop links, and there's a YouTube channel links, and there's also links to social media. We've got thousands and thousands of people in social media groups that you can join, and you're not alone. You can talk to these people. We're all working together. We're all networking. So yeah, sovereignproject.live.
Okay. So if we get people there, get them registering onto the social media, start chatting with people, and then get themselves registered onto these courses, whether that's online or locally.
Locally, yeah.
And get people to understand how this system works, the system they're in, I mean, and how corrupt that system is, and how they can break out of that system. And then once they start, I'm sure like me, once they start to see through the window and go, there's something a little bit more out there, they'll get hungry for it like I am now, and wanting to really dig deep into this and to really find out, do I actually need a driving license? Do I actually need a passport? Do I actually need insurance? Because, insurance is one of the ones, I know we touched on this the other night, where by rights, when you take out an insurance policy, at the end of the year, you should get your money back. Yes. Because you didn't claim on it. So hang on a minute, they must owe me bloody millions.
They do, yes. They make millions off you because you don't know how it all works. They're supposed to give you the bond back, and they never do.
So, and again, a lot of this is out of admiral law.
Yes.
And we notice this when, we know the reason of a birth certificate is because the minute you've got a birth certificate, you've signed up to admiral law.
Correct.
We know that. So there's so many things, Pete, that I could talk to you for months. I know. Because I think as we're coming to a close, for me, I've learned so much today. I hope this gives other farmers and members of the general public here the foresight, the vision to be able to be brave enough to just take tentative steps towards trying to protect themselves, towards trying to protect their families, towards trying to protect our country and the world. Because as it sits at the minute from where I'm looking on this, and I'm someone I'm a figures person, I look into the actual resources, what they're after. And people say, oh, the WEF, and it's not the WEF. This is much, much bigger than them, much bigger. And when you actually understand just how big it is and how greedy these people are, you start to understand, what I find entertaining, and I got to say this, Pete, in all of this, is how few of them there actually is.
I know.
There's 8 billion of us, and there's probably, I don't know, if there was 10,000 of the real top ones,
that's it.
We're not talking about toppling. If we were on the other side of that scale, but it's only 10,000 of us, there's 8 billion of them, we'd be buggered. But this is really not a big game to play. No. This is just about, and I know, there's lots of people saying this is about just standing up together. And that is all this is about, isn't it? Everyone's standing up at once going, do you know what? We've had enough. The game's over. We're not taking part anymore. We're not participating in your way of doing this.
Yes.
I'm going to become sovereign. I'm going to do what I want to do on a daily basis. And do you know what? Do whatever you want, because you haven't got enough staff. You haven't got enough members of police. You haven't got enough soldiers on the ground to actually be able to enforce anything at all. And if you do try and enforce it, the general public will deal with you.
Yes, because we outnumber them.
Pete, I don't know what else we can do on this interview. Pete, I'm just so grateful for you taking the time to come on with me as my first person to interview.
Yeah.
Where do I go from here? I mean, I genuinely sat here now thinking I might have to cancel all the other interviews because I don't really know how I can better this one from my side. Because
it was a good chat. I enjoyed myself.
Because there's just so much people can learn from all of this.
Yeah.
Pete, I'm blown away.
No worries, mate. No worries.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for, I guess what you've achieved for me certainly is just put it into layman's terms and broken it down so I can at least have an understanding of what I'm going to learn about. Yes. Because I think, I don't speak a foreign language, but when I wanted to go to France on holiday, I took the time over the course of 6 months to learn the basics, to be able to ask for a cup of tea, a fried breakfast, to be able to say, please, thank you, how much is that? And I could do the basics. This seems to me that if everybody knew the basics, that the government would be on a back foot.
Yes, if you just learn the basics, you don't need to know as much as I know and spend 30 years studying it. Just the basics. You get enough people who just know the basics, this game comes to an end.
Yeah. And I think it's quite essential that we do that in a hurry, really, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Time's running out. We've got till the end of the decade and that's it.
Yeah, and I would say we haven't even got that long personally, because by the end of the decade, they want this in place.
Yeah.
And we know that they're escalating time really quick to try and push a lot of this through quicker than ever. Digital currencies, jibby jab IDs and all sorts of things.
You've got it.
So, I mean, I don't take part in any of it. One question before you go in, Pete.
We'll squeeze it in and then we'll end it.
While I've got you here.
Yeah.
You covered the point earlier about money is nothing and it's a promissory note. We've seen the elite, the world's absolute elite, which own all this money, which they belong to certain clubs so that they print more for them because they belong to the clubs. They make sure the governmental club protects the contractors within it under legislations and things like that. It seems to me that a lot of these elite have been buying up actual assets from pretend money.
Yes.
So this is no different to a game of Monopoly, is it?
Correct. That's right. And they get it because here's the thing. This is a promissory note. It's got Bank of England written on it. That means it's owned by the Bank of England. It's not yours. It's their monopoly money. And you're playing in their casino.
So what happened to the gold? What that was backed against?
Oh, long gone. That was removed in 1971 when Nixon took the gold from the dollar and researched the Bretton Woods Agreement.
Right.
And, we're basically operating on a dollar standard. So this is pegged to the dollar. I think it's a 6-point swing. So however the dollar goes up, this goes up with it, and down, this goes down with it. But there's no value on this whatsoever. But, I mean, we won't have time to go into this. But one thing I'll leave everybody with, everyone watching this, we are the creditors of this money. That's what the national debt is. The national debt is what the government owes us, the people.
But we're led to believe, aren't we, that we owe that debt?
Yes, that's right. They trick you. It's the other way around. The government owes us that debt. And then they tax you to pay the interest on the national debt. That's what the tax is for. Oh, my God.
How good are they to us?
I don't tell you, when you learn this system, it blows your mind. It really does. Anyway.
Pete, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to an idiot, in my opinion, about this and to get the basics into my head and leave me feeling hungry to want to learn more about this, because it's something I've not gone anywhere near because I was too scared. And that, for me, is probably where 99% of the population sits. They're sitting in that fear factor of, oh, I daren't challenge the government. No. And I think what everyone, including myself, needs to understand, we're not alone. There is help out there. That help is growing.
Yes.
I know that from your side, there's a bank of solicitors and so forth in the background. I've spoken to different legal groups across the country, different sovereign groups, and they all have their own little groups of solicitors and things. And like you said earlier, I think what for me needs to come out of this video is different people and different groups watching this. Please find a solution to come together. That is where the strength lies, in us all uniting under one roof. Whatever those thoughts and feelings about each other's groups are, is absolutely water under the bridge.